So the big question, what is going on, Merijn? Are you using steroids? Are you cycling? And the answer is no. I'm not cycling steroids. I'm not using SARMs. I am following a medical procedure. It's called
What's up, guys? Derek, moreplace.com. Today we're going to be talking about TRT. And Merijn actually came out with his coming out video, I guess you can call it. And if you haven't seen, just literally 24 hours before that, I had come out with my video basically elaborating on why I think he's on gear. And then, you know, within 24 hours, our speculations were confirmed. And seemingly, my thumbnail on my video, which was broken for the first 24 hours, suddenly fixed itself. So I don't fucking know what was up with YouTube there, but the thumbnail, as you guys probably know if you saw it, was broken. No matter what I did, it wouldn't fucking load. And now it's back. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. But basically I just elaborated on his recent body composition changes and the very apparent difference. And expectedly he came out and basically talked about what he's doing, and that's what we're going to be getting into in this one. It's kind of going to be a reaction video just to some of the main points. So one of the things that comes up pretty often in this industry is TRT as a kind of, not a loophole to get out of claiming you're on gear, but a way to kind of like soften the blow. It doesn't seem like that's what he's doing fully in this video, but I just wanted to kind of go over some stuff that commonly gets misconstrued, because some people do that quite a bit. They'll kind of use TRT as a cop-out, as, oh, it's, you know, like an official medical thing. And it's like, yeah, it is. But I mean, you know, when you're in your early 20s, it's kind of like, and you know, who the fuck am I to talk? But at least I will... He does this too. I'm not trying to imply he does this, but the problem is a lot of guys will say, oh, I'm just on TRT, when in reality, they're using 200 to 300 milligrams a week. And even if they're not, even if they're using an amount that is, you have to keep in mind, this is such a general thing that even if you're within the reference range is so variable that you could be within, you could be 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, but it's like, just because on paper you're in a reference range, how many men on earth actually have 1,000 nanograms per deciliter plus natural testosterone level? Not that fucking many. I did a video on this not that long ago too. I'll put a card up in the thing here, the corner, showing how many men naturally produce over 1,000 nanograms per deciliter of test. And it's not that many. And even the guys that do, it's not for a 24-hour period chronically like you would get with a bleed from an esterified test. So I'm gonna get into this here and kind of give my reactions to it. But you know, this is a pretty transparent video and good for him for posting this.
So the big question, what is going on, Merijn? Are you using steroids? Are you cycling? And the answer is no. I'm not cycling steroids. I'm not using SARMs. I am following a medical procedure. It's called TRT, under supervision of a doctor. All right, so it's a bit different than you might have expected, you know? I'm going to explain all this in this video, in my words.
To be honest, it's not a whole lot different than I expected, because it's like, this is something that he does a good job of not, like, he makes pretty damn clear in this video that he's not claiming it is, you know, the equivalent of natural, even though he's within the therapeutic reference range. But there are like subtle hints about throwing shade at guys who use gear not for the right reasons and blah, blah, blah. And I'm just gonna, I'll give my reaction to it after.
Because I am not a doctor, all right? Which is why I wanted to get a doctor on there for this video, but realistically, it's not a good idea anyway, because you should talk to your personal doctor if you are interested in this, which I'm gonna explain in this video. It's not even about being interested, it's more so about whether you need it or not. Because it's actually something that can really improve your life, which is what I want to explain in this video, and which is why I decided to go for it.
So basically, he is implying by now that he has a medical need to be on testosterone replacement therapy, which at 24 years old or whatever he is extremely unlikely. Let's leave it at that, especially for the physique he maintains. You know, is that indicative of somebody who is deficient as fuck? Yeah, maybe if you're like chronically depriving yourself of macro and micronutrients year round, then maybe. But I mean, is it actually indicative of your true endogenous androgen production with enough food, enough sleep, enough recovery, enough not going to Ibiza and getting fucked up with your friends? I don't know. We're going to listen to more and I'll give my opinion here as we go through it.
And so a lot of people think that, like steroids are obviously, not good for your health. Maybe if you use them in a controlled way, they may not harm your health like that much, but like I wouldn't want to say anything about that. I think they will if you cycle them. I'm a big, I'm really against cycling steroids, and I've always said that in my videos because I believe steroids are a lifelong commitment. But I'm using a very little amount under supervision of a doctor, getting my blood levels tested, making sure my health is in check, and I literally feel better than I've ever felt because the amount of testosterone I take is such a little amount, like it's not comparable to a steroid cycle. It's such a little amount that what it does is I was in a very low range, in a very low level, and right now I'm at the upper level of testosterone.
So like, I don't know if I necessarily, get good vibes from the fact that he keeps harping on it's such a small amount, like it's actually nothing. It's actually like pretty much just fucking natural. It's actually pretty much what my balls would produce if I had good balls. And it's like, man, like just say it helps a fucking lot and it's putting you way higher than a genetic elite, because we all know you wouldn't produce this much chronically 24/7 otherwise. Like he goes on to say that, but it's like some of the video is too much like it's so small, it's such a small dose, it's like fucking nothing, it's actually like nothing, guys. It's nothing, it's not even gear. I'm like, I might as well be natural. I'm fucking natural, guys, all right? It's not actually gear. But so I would like to see what his actual dose was. I would like to see some baseline blood work to actually assess what his baseline was, ideally when he's not like depriving himself of calories, and then see what he is at post, actually using it. So I don't doubt that what he's using is a small amount. It's just like the small is relative. There's some guys that think 300 milligrams per week is small. There's some guys that think, I know guys who literally do 10 milligrams a day microdosed of Test E. And that's like, if you want to look up what actual males produce on a daily basis, it's like, you'd be shocked how little it is. It's like literally on average, like 5 to 6 milligrams. So per week, it's like, like at best, you'd be producing 70 milligrams a week if you were like a genetic hyper elite. And then on top of that, the amount that you actually sustain around the day, just because you can wake up and get a 900 nanogram per deciliter testosterone reading on a blood test, you have to understand the diurnal rhythm of testosterone secretion in the body. It's not just like you constantly have a pulsation of like 900 nanograms if you're like a genetic elite who just happens to be at the top end of production. It actually peaks in the morning and then it kind of goes up and down, and there's different ways in which it fluctuates throughout the day. It's not a constant bleed of perfect hormone production no matter what. And this is even if things are on point. Like when you wake up in the morning, here's an example: diurnal rhythm of testosterone secretion, nanograms per deciliter. So we have this guy. This is average of young men here. We have set around 750 nanograms in the morning. Upon waking, as you see, it kind of goes down a little bit into the low 600s, pops back up, goes down a little more. It literally dips into the 500s for part of the day, and then it starts to climb back up. But you can see it's not chronically elevated at like 1,000 the whole fucking day with no changes whatsoever. Like there's different processes in the body that facilitate it going up and down, and it's a secretory action. It's not something that's just like constant pulsations, you know what I mean? So it just like in itself, even if you have a blood result of 800 nanograms per deciliter, you already can't compare it to a natural level, because when you have an esterified testosterone, you cleave the ester off, you have this constant bleed of stable blood serum concentrations throughout the entire day that are yielding muscle protein synthesis, anti-catabolic processes, things that you just would otherwise not be getting around the clock when you're using, well, not when you're using, when you have your endogenous androgen production going, and it's going up and down and up and down, and literally the smallest fucking thing can even ruin your entire day. Like you get one night of shitty sleep, you're lopping off like 50% of your testosterone levels just like that. You eat a micronutrient deficient diet model like these guys you do if it fits your macros. Just like that, boom, another fucking 20% of your test potentially. Maybe even more. Like there's so many factors when you're natural. It's like not even, frankly, it's not really comparable. Like a guy, you could argue a guy would build more muscle on testosterone replacement with like 700 nanograms as his blood serum concentration versus a guy who's natural who has the exact same genetics but makes 1,000 nanograms naturally. Like that, I would probably bet the guy with the 700 stable would build more muscle. Reason being, when you pin a bolus amount of androgens, you actually lower your SHBG a significant amount. So you're gonna have a disproportionately higher free testosterone than the guy who endogenously produces that same or even more amount of test. So even though on paper your total T is like natural and it's such a small dose and blah, 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 it's, you know, you're still on like potentially a mini cycle depending on what your blood levels are. Like you could be like 1,200 nanograms and just be in the reference range, and like that's cool. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Like at the end of the day, it should also be about optimization, which is largely what this guy's video is boiling down to, because frankly, I don't think medically he probably doesn't actually need TRT. I think this is more so a result of a guy who stays shredded all the fucking time and is chronically depleting himself of adequate macro and micronutrients, and who knows what his lifestyle's like. I'm sure he probably gets his sleep and blah, blah, blah. But I mean, like, if you actually look at studies done on bodybuilders who are natural and like what happens to your hormone production when you deprive yourself of these things, it doesn't really take that long to recover, to be honest. If you're eating enough and you're getting the proper recovery stimulus going. I'm gonna let him talk a bit more and I'll kind of touch more on his points as he goes here. But one thing you have to understand before we get into this is the fluctuation of hormones. And, you know, like undisclosed, just saying TRT, it's like, what's your dose, you know? Like it makes a big difference if you're fucking 1,200 nanograms per deciliter stable blood serum concentrations versus 700. And even if you're 700, it's like, is it really comparable to a natural? Like, sometimes it gets a bit convoluted when we talk about this stuff, and on top of that, I'll touch on it a bit later, because I don't want to like TRT is like, I do TRT, and that is, I fucking own a TRT clinic. I'm not trying to dissuade people from doing TRT. I'm just saying, try to be transparent about people understanding what's going on here when he's discussing things and getting a bit more, you know, insider education about like how the body works and how it doesn't exactly, pinning a certain amount doesn't exactly replicate the exact way your body would otherwise naturally produce it throughout the day, just because on a blood test at one snapshot in time, it might have equivalent total T levels.
This could still be a natural level of testosterone. However, I am not going to claim that I'm natural anymore, because I'm not. Like some people, they use TRT, or some people, and then they say they're still natural because they have a natural amount of testosterone. But no, that, like, I do not agree with that.
Okay, so that's good. So he says he doesn't agree with that. It's the same thing I was just saying. I don't really agree with that. I sort of thought he was going to really lean into in this video, because this is something I see all the time. Like Mark Lobeliner is like one of the worst fucking guys for this. He'll be like, he's on like test deca anadrol, and then he'll be like, yeah, you know, it's prescribed by my doctor, so it's healthy HRT. It's like, dog, 300 test, 200 deca, GH, and fucking anadrol is not HRT. Like, come on, have some common sense. So Merijn seems to have at least a good grasp of that, which I was getting the sense that he was going to like really lean into the fucking Lobeliner angle, but hopefully it doesn't sound like that's the case.
A big part why I started TRT is for my mood, it's for the sex drive, is, you know, to feel just better in general. Because like, guys, I was in a pretty bad place, and then I tested my testosterone levels. You know, you guys saw that I went to Dubai as well to take some time off, everything. And that was all me in that bad state with very low testosterone levels. I waited a bit again to test my levels again, see if they came back. And I've also tested my levels like over a year ago, and they were already in like a low range, but not like super, super low, but they were in a low range. Still acceptable range. Now they're already in a really, really low range. And after 10 years of training, making such little progress, and next to that, just my mood just really decreasing and not feeling good, I made a decision to start TRT to put me in, you know, the high range. And yes, that is obviously a bigger range than I was before, when I was, you know, still natural, and before I even did the competition and got it down so many times. But I do think that shredding down all these times, taking my body to such a level that is really unhealthy, that is not good for me, may have impacted me like forever, my hormones. It may also have not. Like I don't know.
So that's an interesting point to touch on, and there's not like a ton of data on this, but just anecdotally and as well as in most of the clinical literature that I've seen, if you have a guy who does a bodybuilding prep, like for example, this is a pretty well-known study, Natural Bodybuilding Competition Preparation and Recovery, a 12-month case study. So for this one, this was a drug-free male bodybuilder, 26 to 27 years old. So it's pretty relevant age bracket, as well as just the conditions 6 months before and after a competition. Basically, they assessed all of his markers, including body composition, as well as his testosterone levels, his endocrine function, etc. What they found going through his competition prep, basically as he cut aggressively coming up to the show, when he was 6 weeks out, he had 0% change in baseline, basically, with his testosterone levels still. It wasn't until he got to like 3 weeks out that his test levels were like sub like 25% down. And by the time he got to the contest, his test levels were like slashed in half essentially. But notably, his test levels essentially recovered to baseline within the same amount of time it took them to drop. So for Merijn's test levels to not have come back at all, you know, he must have had some pretty shitty baseline levels. And, you know, I guess potentially just subpar function to begin with. And I don't know if it had, I would like to see his baseline, to be honest, because typically it's pretty unlikely for a guy to be able to walk around looking the way he did, borderline hypogonadal, especially if you're like, I would understand if he was like chronically depleting himself year round trying to stay shredded, which would make a bit more sense as to why he would be low T, because, you know, as you can see, if you're trying to be single digit body fat all the time, it's not exactly the best thing for your hormone levels. So like example here, we have time point reference range of total testosterone. So for nanograms per milliliter, you have to multiply this by 100 to get to the nanogram per deciliter figure that we're all familiar with. So this, we're looking at a reference range of 290 nanograms per deciliter to 1300 nanograms per deciliter, which is a pretty generous range, frankly. So we can see here at 6 weeks out, this guy had 922 nanograms per deciliter. By 3 weeks out, his test levels were dropped down to 225. And by the show, he was 227 nanograms per deciliter. Within 3 weeks, he was back up to 870. And by 6 weeks after the show, he was up to 991, which is even higher than he was cutting for the show. So within, you know, a month, this guy is like essentially back to normal. But you have to understand too, this guy is eating back to normal too. Whereas Merijn potentially is trying to stay shredded even after his shows. He seems to do like this rebound binging, but maybe after that he tries to go right back into a deficit to peel the weight off. I don't follow his stuff closely enough to know what he does exactly, but it seems like he's shredded the majority of the year, so that would definitely play into it. But it's one of those things where it's like, is this really relevant to the average person? Like how many, like, can you really claim your medical need for TRT based on the fact that you're basically starving yourself? You know, like, to each his own. I'm not judging, I'm just saying, some people need to be aware that they may not actually have a physiological need for it. Rather, they're simply putting themselves in a position where the reflection of, you know, like poor lifestyle practices essentially is like showing on a piece of paper, as well as, you know, symptomatically, like it's going to be represented in your quality of life. If you're trying to be, you know, 8% body fat year round as a natural, like that'd be very fucking difficult to do and maintain a high level of androgen production. So, you know, it's kind of like when your lifestyle is based on you being shredded all the time, then I can definitely see the justification as a guy in your mid 20s. And like, you know, obviously I can see the justification pretty fucking easily because I made that justification years ago. But I mean, my thing was less about staying in single digit body fat percentage range, and rather it was, you know, a result of blasting and cruising for many years and, you know, making a decision that, you know, long term to just stay on a physiologic amount. And it basically, you know, tapered down to what I consider like more therapeutic replacement over the years rather than like bodybuilder TRT, which is what a lot of guys are doing. And I'd like to see what his actual dose is. It'd be interesting because a lot of people, they think though that it's like, oh, if I'm on like 150 mgs a week, then it makes like no difference. It's just the same if I was natural. It's like, it's really not, you know, like it actually makes a big difference. And a lot of guys who are on a reasonable dose would fucking melt if they came off. Like, I would lose size if I came off. You know, like Greg Doucette, he's only on 140 milligrams a week, and everyone's like, there's no way you're on that much. It's like, I can almost guarantee you that's what he's saying he's using is actually what he uses. It doesn't take a whole lot of tests to maintain size, because you're maintaining a stable blood serum concentration level throughout the entire day. So just because on a piece of paper, a guy like Greg or a guy like Merijn or whatever might have like a, I don't know, 800 nanogram per deciliter total T, they might have a disproportionately high free T because they're pinning a bolus amount of androgens twice a week and artificially crushing their SHBG a bit. And then on top of that, the ester being cleaved off and the half-life of the drug ensures that you're having stable levels throughout the entire week with no fluctuations essentially, as opposed to a guy with endogenous production that's having ebbs and flows like all fucking day and maybe only has a 800 nanogram per deciliter total for a total of like 5 hours per day, and then the rest of it's like 500, 600s, up and down, and the free T likely not being representative of. You're typically going to see a higher free T in guys on TRT too, which you have to understand too. It's not just your total. The free hormones circulating around to tissues not being bound up by SHBG and albumin are what are going to determine essentially how much muscle you can actually build, because these hormones are not inactive when they're bound to SHBG, but you know, that's a whole nother discussion for, you know, like next level scientific shit. But I mean, for the most part, your free T is going to dictate your hypertrophy response. So for a guy pinning twice a week, getting an 800 nanogram per deciliter total test level, even if it's in range, it's chronically at that exact level. And on top of that, they probably have a higher free T relative to their total T than the average natural person who produces 800 nanograms per deciliter too. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. And then on top of that, like the likelihood that you're even gonna be a guy who produces, you know, like most people when they're doing the TRT thing for quality of life performance enhancement too, like they're gonna let themselves go to like 1,000. Like why else, like, you know, why else would you be doing TRT if you didn't wanna optimize? For most people, that's what they're gonna wanna do. So that's like 900, 1,000 is what most people wanna be at around. And it's like, nobody's really like producing that much naturally, like for long term throughout the entire day, realistically. So even though it's on a reference range, at the end of the day, this is all just arbitrary numbers like pulled out of the fucking ass of people who are looking at populations and averages and fucking making these reference ranges. It's not really like a dictation if, you know, you should be classified as a guy who's being performance enhanced or not. So a lot of this is just like subjective to like taboo fucking interpretations in this industry, and people are going to, you know, judge negatively or positively, or spin their story in a way that's more favorable for what they're doing, or, you know, just talk about it openly and explain that it's just because, you know, TRT shows a certain number on a piece of paper, it doesn't mean that you would be able to actually achieve that same physique if you weren't on that dose, even if you produce that much test naturally. And I know that doesn't really make sense on the surface, but if you listen to what I said about the SHBG, the free T, the chronic elevation, not having any fluctuations whatsoever, it becomes pretty clear how the fucking disparity between the two. Like you could literally have one night of bad sleep or go drinking or whatever, have, you know, fall off your diet once, and you're gonna get fucking nuked for like 24 hours. Whereas another guy, you could go to fucking Ibiza with fucking Rob Lipset and Merijn and, you know, drink and get shittered and fucking stay up all night. And because you're pinning T, you still have your 1,000 nanograms per deciliter in the morning, which you wouldn't have otherwise. And then think about the anti-catabolic properties of that exogenous test too, that you would otherwise not be getting with your endogenous testosterone being crushed into the ground. It's not just about the anabolic properties of this stuff when you're naturally producing it. If you crush your endogenous production, you're also losing out on the anti-catabolic processes that would otherwise ensure muscle protein sparing properties, muscle degradation, preventing that. Like this is all stuff that is going to be maxed out when you're on TRT, that you can't even fucking compare to being natural, in my opinion. So let's continue. I got a bit off fucking track there, sorry about that, but let's see.
And just feel great overall, and my blood levels are still completely healthy and perfectly in check. So for me, this was the right decision to make. Now realize, I've been doing this under supervision of a doctor, checking everything, checking all these levels. It is not just like a radical, stupid thing to do. You guys know I'm smart, man. I'm not a stupid guy, you know, so I know what I'm doing. It's not the same as a steroid cycle. So some people might think that that is it and that's stupid and etc. And you guys also know that I am not even against people who use steroids. I'm friends with many people who do that. It is their decision. I decided to be natural. Now I'm not natural anymore. That is a decision, right? And it was kind of a hard decision for me to make as well, because now I cannot call myself natural anymore. And like I've always been preaching the natural lifestyle. But at the end of the day, guys, I also have to choose for myself and not just choose for like what my image is online. And so that's something I was highly struggling with, man. It was like, you know, but Merijn, like, yeah, I want to try that to like feel better in my life and have, you know, increase in my personal life. And also in this case, I've been training for 10 years. So one of the reasons is I simply like, you know, it would be great to make some more gains. And now I'm able to do that.
Okay, so, you know, a lot of this is boiled down to obviously trying to stay shredded all the time is going to take its toll on your production. And if this is something you're like dedicated to maintaining, then like you could argue the medical viability of needing to intervene with TRT for sure. Cause it's like, you could argue like, okay, well, if you just ate fucking properly and you optimize your lifestyle, you probably have decent enough production and not run into these side effects. But for a guy who's trying to maintain a physique that's better than the average, you know, 14, 15% average Joe who goes to the gym, you know, you can't stay shredded really and maintain peak testosterone levels. It's kind of like going against the whole physiology of the human body. Like when you start starving it, it's going to start going into defense mode essentially. And you know, for him, clearly he's decided that that's a long-term play for him, is getting shredded like a lot of the time of the year. So do you want to deal with those chronically crushed levels all the time? You know, a lot of people don't want him, and that's totally understandable. And, you know, you can't really expect him to just like, oh, you should be bulking back up and like gaining fucking weight again just because you need to get your testosterone back up. Like you can't just expect a guy to want to sacrifice a certain look that he strives for and worked hard for just because, like, you know, obviously this is all personal interpretation at the end of the day. And this is obviously a decision he made and it was well thought out. And, you know, like realistically, would he be able to maintain a high quality of life chilling at 8% year round? Like, no, probably not. So, you know, it kind of makes sense. And I think largely this boils down to the, like I said in my first video, the lack of progress, just being, you know, the mind fuckery that would go on from going to the gym years on end and making no progress whatsoever. Totally understandable why you would, especially in this industry. Like, how could you go like to fucking Ibiza with your fucking friends and see all these guys on cranking their minds out and you're just making no progress year after year, and they're just, you know, fucking drinking, eating shitty, like not getting their proper sleep, and they're still like maintaining better physiques than you, doing everything properly. And they have way more leniency on everything. They feel good, you feel like shit, even though you're like way more on point with everything potentially, you know. That would suck, and it would, you know, really play on your mental state. And it seems like for him, you know, this is a well thought out thing.
The reason why I want to be in a high range is because I have paid my dues. I've been training for 10 years. All right. I'm dedicated to this lifestyle. Lifting is what I love. This is honestly literally my life. You guys see me train everywhere. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. I haven't taken more than 2 weeks off ever since I was 17 years old.
Yeah, so paying your dues, a lot of this is definitely about the lack of progress, like I said. So, you know, going year after year, doing a giant, like, dedicating like 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months to a bulk, and then cutting down and seeing absolutely no change in lean muscle mass, like, you know, it's gonna fuck with your head. And it's like totally understandable what he's saying right now.
I've decided that I want to do this, not just for my mood and the increase in, you know, sex drive and feeling better throughout the day and having more energy, etc., because it also helps me, you know, literally increase the quality of my life. But next to that, one reason is obviously that I'm in the fitness industry. I want to have the best physique that I possibly can. And, you know, I really love this shit and I feel like I've earned it.
Yeah, so a lot of this is just about the physique. You know, he wants to see his work actually manifest itself and for progress to happen. Going to the gym for fucking years and making no progress just to maintain what you have and feeling shitty while you're doing it to maintain your same physique, you know, definitely gonna play a mental toll for sure.
I'm really happy with it. And I'm also not telling you guys that you can look like me right now at the moment. I'm not selling that dream to you guys, because you cannot. And you might be able to, but I'm not going to say that you can. All right, because you literally could be able to if your genetics are better and your testosterone is already in a high range. Because I'm still within that natural range. I'm not outside of it. But for me, it's not my natural range. So that's just what I wanted to make really clear.
Yeah, so my what I would say to that is basically sort of reiterating what I said earlier is, if your genetics are good, you could replicate his physique naturally for sure. I wouldn't really bring up the testosterone level thing though, you know, because you can't, like you can, but I mean, like, again, it comes back to the thing as, is an 800 nanogram per deciliter or 1,000 nanogram per deciliter on paper of a natural equivalent to that of a guy on exogenous TRT? Not really, because it's going to be a sustained state no matter how badly you fuck up your lifestyle. You could literally like go drink with your buddies and then get 2 hours sleep and you're still gonna have 1,000 nanograms in the morning, versus the other guy just fucked his next like half week potentially by doing that for one night and lost muscle potentially. So not only are you not going to gain muscle, but you might actually strip some off, whereas the other guy is just like anti-catabolic as fuck and everything's like lined up. So you're not going to make the best progress, but you might still at least maintain everything you have with relative ease if you're on a decent enough dose of TRT. And again, I don't know what his like small dose is, but you know, I feel like it would have been maybe it was good that he didn't say anything, because then it gives people, you know, ideas of what to do. Maybe he did that on purpose, I don't know. But yeah, you should see your doctor to figure out if it's a good idea for you. One thing I do want to say though is I definitely wouldn't recommend just like checking your test levels when you're trying to get shredded and you're like 7% body fat naturally and you're eating like fucking 2,000 calories a day and going to get your blood tested and seeing like a 300 nanogram per deciliter total test and then assuming I need TRT. Like, just be aware of the effect that diet and lifestyle can have on your total testosterone levels. Like, you could have, like I said, you could have like one shit day and then show up the next day and have just like a destroyed reading that makes you look like a hypogonadal old man. It doesn't necessarily represent, that's just a snapshot in time. It doesn't necessarily represent what you're always at. Like, you even saw the diurnal rhythm of testosterone secretion, like I showed earlier at the start of the video. This is like natural production. It's not like, it depends. Even when you're getting your blood test, the time of day is going to play a massive role on what your levels show. And that's not even factoring in all the lifestyle things that preceded that, you know, the time of this blood draw. So anyways, I think this was a pretty solid video that kind of represents what he's doing, why he's doing it. And you know, you couldn't really give a better justification to like for a guy who may not otherwise need it medically if he wasn't, you know, engaging in practices that aren't essentially sustainable. Like, you could, you know, a healthy, natural, athletic lifestyle is sustainable, but it's more like the scenarios he puts his body through to achieve, you know, like crazy levels of body fat. Obviously, that's not a sustainable practice. And for it to even be close to sustainable without feeling like dog shit, you know, androgens would need to be incorporated in some capacity. So like, I understand, and I also understand the not making progress and just having low quality of life to maintain the physique he wants. So, and the industry, it's understandable. I don't know. I think he probably, like, it would have been good to really own in on the fact that things that can significantly affect your hormone profile can be reversed with relative ease for the majority of people. Like, within a few weeks, if you have a shitty blood test, you could go back and be fine if you just corrected whatever the problem was. Like I showed, even with the guy peaking for a natural bodybuilding show, that guy, you know, he recovered within like 3 weeks. So just because you're single digit body fat and you're eating like fucking nothing, if you get a blood test that shows you're like, and you feel like shit and you're like borderline hypogonadal on paper, just like dig into it a bit more before you just like haphazardly jump on something that you're going to stay on for the rest of your life in your 20s is my advice. And that's coming from somebody who's on TRT in their 20s. And I think that should have been perhaps highlighted a bit better in the video, is that there are a lot of guys, I'm sure, that watch his shit that try to, that idolize him and probably want a similar lifestyle and probably do try to stay shredded year round. And perhaps even, you know, like I've seen guys try to operate on like sub 2,000 calories year round to maintain a lean physique. And I'm like, bro, like, not only is that stupid from fucking your metabolism that much to the point where you need to be in like girl level calories to get lean, but on top of that, like it's not sustainable. And these guys are, you know, slamming appetite suppressants, fucking smoking so they can eat sub 2,000 calories, slamming Adderalls, and just so they can eat like fucking nothing just to stay lean. And it's, you know, like expectedly you're going to have shitty testosterone levels as a result of it. It doesn't necessarily mean you have a medical necessity for it though. So just be aware of the circumstances that can influence your hormonal state before you just assume, oh, I need TRT because my testosterone level was shitty on this one blood test. It's a snapshot in a period of time. And if you're doing it for performance enhancement and you're like looking for a justification yourself, like just, you know, that's up to you and like how you want to perceive it. But I'm just saying, like, for the guys who actually are looking at this purely from a therapeutic context and aren't looking at this at all through the lens of how do I help my physique, and are just looking at this like, do I need TRT to stay healthy? These are the guys who should be looking at, was this just a one-off test because of my lifestyle factors that preceded this? So just be aware of that. And I think that should have been owned in on a bit more clearly, as well as perhaps that a TRT of a number on a piece of paper doesn't exactly represent the exact same results you would get with that same testosterone level should it have been endogenously produced. So, you know, like 800 on paper of a total doesn't necessarily represent the same anabolic and anti-catabolic effects you would get of a bleed out fucking sustained 800 with exogenous hormones that aren't affected by lifestyle whatsoever. So take from that what you will. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below about all this stuff. Like, subscribe if you want to get some deep dives into bodybuilding pharmacology and how to stay healthy when you are deploying these compounds in your own personal protocols or optimizing your HRT regimens. I definitely recommend you check out my website, subscribe to my newsletter, or just sub to the channel too, and follow me on my other social media platforms at moreplates_more_dates, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, BitChute, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to listen in the car instead of burn through your data watching YouTube videos, the audio is good. For the Apple Podcasts, I recommend you check that out. If you want qualified patient care coordinators to actually assess your blood work and determine if you are a viable candidate for TRT and would benefit from it in some capacity, check out my TRT clinic. Link in description below. I'm pretty transparent about not trying to push people to it, to be honest. Like, for most people, like I said, the situation that I just fucking elaborated on probably applies for some people, and they may, you know, otherwise, like I've seen some guys that I've done consultations with that just like haphazardly jumped on it because they had some symptoms of like fucking brain fog and fatigue, and their doctor was like, oh, you know what, you're fucking 31, so you probably need TRT. And it's like, it's getting a bit too lenient now, in my opinion, like for some people who aren't actually like seeking it out, for people that don't know better and they just like get thrown on a therapy that's like a lifelong commitment. So definitely educate yourself before you just like see an influencer video and they see, oh, you know, you felt like shit and now my quality of life is super good and I had like one blood test with this on a piece of paper. His thing is probably not relevant to you. And if it is, it's more, you know, I would presume to be from a performance enhancing context more so than an actual, you know, medical necessity. So regardless of what your goals are, even if it's optimization, I still recommend you reach out to them if it is something you're interested in, because hormone optimization is more of a flexible intervention nowadays. But still, just be aware of the things I said. If you're somebody who doesn't know if you medically need it, you may not. So even if you like go through the blood work process, you get your interpretation from the patient care coordinators, they'll be able to tell you like with transparency if this is something that you would benefit from and it's something that's actually medically fucking justified, rather than just, oh, you want some fucking test, you know what I mean? So just, you know, go into stuff educated about why you want to use it, rather than just, oh, this is going to make things better. It's like, you know, educate yourself on the process first, and then from there, the patient care coordinators will refer you to one of our doctors if you are you would benefit from some sort of protocol. And then from there, they'll make an individualized protocol for you. No cookie cutter bullshit with, you know, here's your 200 test and 1 milligram of Arimidex and fucking this and fucking that. It's all tailored towards your personal situation. Literally, even the method of administration is tailored towards you. If you're somebody who has, you know, high SHBG levels, you know, you may otherwise benefit from a more infrequent dosing schedule to drive down your SHBG. If you're a guy with low SHBG because you have insulin resistance or something, you may need a more frequent daily administration schedule because you otherwise would hyperexcrete testosterone. Or you may have a low DHT and you may otherwise benefit from having a disproportionate spike in 5-alpha reduction by applying scrotal cream to your fucking, by your fucking nuts in order to get a higher DHT spike that gives you a better, vitality and fucking androgenic outcome than you would through the injections. You know, there's a lot of different things, even as far as like coming down even to the method of administration and the frequency. This is all stuff that only experts know about. It's not just like, I'm on TRT now and there's only one way to do it. Like, it's not just the dose, it's the method of administration. It's what you need for your own individual goals. It's where you're trying to fucking get with it. There's a lot of things to consider that no one takes into account. Not indiscriminately inhibiting aromatase. You need a doctor who knows what the fuck they're talking about. If you want that, then check out my clinic. Link in description below. All your meds are shipped right to your door. It's all telemedicine, come from your own home. FaceTime, Zoom, Skype, whatever's convenient for you. You can save $50 off your first treatment with the coupon code MPMD50. You can just mention it to the patient care coordinators when you talk to them. They'll mark it down, save you some money, and yeah, you can go from there. Anything else I'm associated with, video description below. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.